Hey everybody, welcome back to We Are the Batman. I'm Mike.
And this is Matthew.
We are now continuing our spooky season series of episodes as we get into what I think everybody, first of all, of course they knew it was coming. We posted about it, but also just you figure we had to talk about it this month. We're doing this, talking about Batman: The Long Halloween, the book and the animated film. We're gonna cover both today because I think it's doable. And because why not? And I think it's actually kind of fitting that we're talking about Batman: The Long Halloween right now because next week we're going to be breaking down The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight, at least from a Harvey Dent perspective, borrows heavily from The Long Halloween. It's funny because, and we'll talk about The Long Halloween again when it comes time to talk about the Batman as well, because the Batman is also heavily influenced by The Long Halloween, which is how I read this again for the show, because I went to my mom's, I got every long and short box I've collected over the years, could not find my copy of Long Halloween, and I know I've read it in the last 5 years. So but as we've talked about on the show, they make those collected box sets for the books that inspired the movies, so I went and got the one for the Batman that came with a fresh copy of The Long Halloween. That's some cool updated art. Anyway, so Long Halloween, the book. This was written by Jeff Loeb, art by Tim Sale. This is known for being one of the most iconic, most well-revered Batman story arcs. When people talk about like top 5, top 3 Batman stories, I think most people put this in their top 3, if not in their number 1. Matt, what is your history with Batman: The Long Halloween prior to getting ready for this episode?
Tim Sale's one of those artists. I think I was a fan of his. If memory serves, he was on Daredevil for a while. I'd have to fact check myself on that as I talk, but I think I was a fan of his art before this. So when it came to, pardon me,
This about Jeff Loeb. You're talking about Jeff Loeb or Tim Sale?
Tim Sale. Tim Sale's the artist.
Yeah.
I
thought you said Jeff Loeb, and I was really confused for a second.
Yeah, because I think Jeff Loeb this is one of the ones, in my opinion, I think that puts him on the map. Like, he's not big up to this point.
Yeah.
But this gets him there. But no, I was a fan of Tim Sale's. He's kind of what got me into it. I knew this was happening. I've never been one, I think we've said this before, I'm not the one to read the monthly Batman books, because sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're not. But anytime it's like a special collection or a special edition or a special kind of thing, I'm really into that, because I like a nice, tight, contained story. I don't want to read 12 issues, Tom King, about Batman trying to decide if he's going to go into Gotham to fight Bane or not. So
I do.
Do what?
I like, me, I like my long storytelling. But I will say, even I have my limits, J.R. Tolkien.
Yeah. But no, so I remember reading this as it came out at a monthly, every month, buying the next issue, and that was cool. The kind of like, what's the next thing? However, this time, having read it, going like, I'm glad I don't have to read this month to month again, because I'm trying to get some story here.
I will say, reading this, and I haven't collected regular releases in a long time. I'm pretty much a trade paperback buyer now. It's just cheaper, and I like to read my stories all at once. I will say, having just now, and again, having read this front to back in the past, reading it front to back in particular for this show, I remember thinking to myself, same thing, like, man, I'm glad, because it's long. Like, The Long Halloween is not short.
Yeah, it's 12 issues.
It's got some, and these are not 12 small issues either. This book has some meat to it. So if I had to read this thing week to week or month to month, I might have not finished it, honestly. Really and truly, because I had to take breaks when I was reading it, because it's a lot. It's good. It's very good, but it's a lot. It's a slow burn of a story, and again, that is my jam. But when it's a movie, there's other things going on to keep me interested. When it's a book, I'm on my own, and so I, like with anything, I can only read so much before I got to take a break. So but this one I think I kept with longer than I usually do. Like I remember when I was reading Mr. Miracle, I paused quite a bit because it's a lot to read. Um, but the Long Halloween, my history with it is, it doesn't go back quite as far as most people because like for a lot of people my age, first of all, this story had come and gone by the time I was old enough to even start collecting comic books. And
Thanks,
um,
buddy.
you're welcome. I gotta bring it up at least once a week. And Matt told everybody. And but no, but also just it was at a time where these comic books weren't readily available like they are now. So I know the first time I read this, I think I was in college.
Okay.
Because I had an old copy that I had gotten somewhere at like a discount bookstore or something. It was like an old. That's why I really want to find it. I'm still looking for it because it's an old copy, but it's in very good shape because I take care of my shit. So I'm trying to find it. But so I first read it in college, and since then I think I read it up until a few years ago. I think I was reading it about once a year around Halloween time because this is the time of year where I thrive. And but in the midst of COVID and moving into a new house and all that and moving across states, it's somewhere, I just don't know where. So that's kind of my history with it. Is just it was one of those, I came to it way late in life, long after it had come out and been re-released several times. So but this is, to keep talking longer and longer and not let Matt talk for some reason. I don't know why I'm talking so much today. But because I really like this book. This is my bag. Like when you talk about like why I love Batman, why I love comic books, like this is why. Like this is my jam.
Yeah.
This is everything. Like this is, you know, not some, is it in my top 3 Batman comics? Yeah, probably, but it's also in like top 3 comics that, like, if you had to sum up Mike Shea's taste in the comic books, like this is one of the ones going on there.
Well, and I think what this is like, the biggest complaint a lot of people have with the Batman movies is he's not enough of a detective. This is a detective story.
Here's what I love about that too. And this is something because whenever anyone talks about a good Batman detective story, they always say The Long Halloween. And as they should, because it's a great one. But what's even better about that, what's kind of like a hidden meta thing about Batman The Long Halloween is, yes, it's a detective story, but even Batman isn't a detective yet in this story.
No.
He's having to come to grips with the fact, he's like, I wasn't counting on being a detective. I wasn't counting on solving mysteries. I was counting on stopping organized crime. Because what a lot of folks forget is this is a continuation of year 1.
Correct.
This is a replacement of year 2, because year 2 is not very good, even though it is what inspired Mask of the Phantasm. Mask of the Phantasms did better. But this was meant to be a replacement of year 2. This is a couple years after. This isn't like a year after year 1. It's like a couple of years after year 1, I think. And this is Batman transitioning. And again, like we're going to talk about when we talk about the Batman again, but it's good when that's kind of the lesson Batman learns at the end of that movie is, I've been doing it all wrong. I can't just be this organized crime, because it's like I got to be something more. And that's what Batman learns in The Long Halloween is, like, I can't just go around punching mobsters. Like, I have a bigger responsibility now. He says as much when they first go to Arkham to visit Calendar Man, and he's like, where they're like, this, Arkham is full thanks to you. And Batman's like, I wanted them in Blackgate. Harvey put them in Arkham. And then there's this pause, and he goes, and Harvey was right.
Yeah.
Because Batman is this is one of the times in comics where you get to see character growth with Batman.
Yeah.
The Batman at the end of The Long Halloween is not the one we start off with at the beginning.
Well, and I think what is interesting too, and I get into this kind of stuff when you talk about like this being a replacement for year 2, is like this book takes place over 13 months.
Yeah,
so
it's a year-long story.
So there's no saying the events of year 2 didn't happen as well. Like, I mean, you're talking about pockets of time within those months. You're not following every single thing he's doing. There's still other things that are happening while totally this is going on.
They skip months at times.
Yeah, because the whole thing is, if you don't know, is that there's a serial killer named Holiday.
We should probably break down what the hell this book's about for those who don't know. By the way, if you don't know, why are you here?
Yeah, fair. But it's like every month there's a murder, and it's blamed on this holiday killer.
Yeah.
And
And they're always on. It's always on a holiday.
a holiday. So there's times.
Except for one.
Yeah, except for one.
And I was so mad they left this out of the movie.
There's like, so I don't
I
want to.
understand that. I understand they had a time constraint. They already had to split it into 2 movies. I get it.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to me. We'll get to it in a little bit, but the stuff that they put into the movie that wasn't there, and the stuff that they left out that I think would have made it a better movie.
It's hit or miss with me when I guess we're gonna get to the movie when we're done talking about the book. Yeah, there are some things they left out of the movie that were in the book that I wish they had put in the movie, but there was some stuff in the movie that wasn't in the book that I'm like, the movie did that better.
Yeah.
The book needed that. But
Yeah.
we'll get into that when we talk about more about the movie. Yeah, there's a serial killer killing people on holidays called called Holiday. Though the papers call him Holiday.
I think it's
Or
interesting,
her.
or them, and not in pronouns away, but the fact that there's more than one of them.
There's more than one because this was written in the 80s, guys.
Yeah.
This is written in the 80s.
No, I think what's interesting to me, and I know they've never touched on it because of comics, but it would be fun to have a moment of Batman going, had I been smarter, I think I could have solved this first and maybe avoided the repercussions.
Yeah.
Because,
go ahead.
Spoiler alert, there's 3 of them, and one of them's Harvey Dent.
Yeah.
And had he realized before who the killer was earlier on, he maybe could have avoided Harvey Dent becoming Two-Face. Yeah. So that's where sometimes I wish we'd get some of that out of Batman. But I think, of course, there's been like 2 reboots of the universe. So,
and every single one, Harvey Dent still becomes Two-Face. So maybe it's just it's a fixed point in time.
I don't know. It's just
Class
one of those.
Figure it out.
It's one of those too where it's like they also pick and choose what stuff stays, what stuff goes. They're almost as bad as James Gunn with the DCU.
in James Gunn we trust. It is, but that's also, again, I think that's why I like the book so much, is because I think Batman himself knows, like, yeah, this was not what I prepared for. This was not what I had planned in being the Batman. And had I known this is the kind of stuff I would have been facing, I would have known what to look for. And you're absolutely right. In hindsight, if he had known what to look for, if he knew what he was doing in this situation, he could have totally caught it. He would have known where to look. But he admits as much himself when he's talking to Gordon towards the end, where he's like, I've suspected Harvey for a long time. I just didn't want to say it out loud because it's Harvey.
Yeah.
And it's in The Long Halloween that Batman first begins to not only develop his detective skills, but his general just distrust of everyone. I need to go back and reread Tower of Babel again, but I would be willing to bet that at some point he mentions, like, look, I have seen the best of us fall. Anyone can go to the dark side for any reason. Everyone's got something that'll push them there. That's why Batman has his contingency plans for his friends.
Yeah.
And I that mistrust begins in The Long Halloween.
I think that's totally valid. But no, I thought I like Tim Sale's art, and I was wrong. Lee Weeks is who was drawing Daredevil, and I think Tim Sale's the same person, so it makes me read The Long Halloween, and then I'm like, oh, it's a different guy. So that's why. So even though the art is of Daredevil brought me to this book.
Well, while we're talking about art and we're talking about Tim Sale, let's address some things about this book, can we? You guys know I don't like to harp on negative, but we have to talk about it. I got because if I don't talk about it, it's going to bug me.
Do it.
I really like 90% of the art in this book, maybe 95. There's really only 3 things I don't like about the art in this book. 3.
Okay.
The first one is I don't like his design of Bruce Wayne. I think he looks too generic. I think he looks too much like just Calendar Man with color, honestly. There are a few times where like a scene is happening and I don't know the person I'm following is Bruce Wayne until somebody says his name.
That's fair.
because I'm like, I don't know who I'm looking at. Because half the time he's got a hat on or something on or a disguise on. So I'm not always sure if what I'm seeing, but and that is kind of the fun of comic books is like you see something happen in a panel and you're like, oh, was that set up earlier? And you flip back and it's like, yes, it actually was somewhere in the background. And you're like, oh, that's cool. They thought about that. Bruce Wayne is so generically drawn in this book that it's hard to tell when it's him on the page sometimes. That's number one. Number two, one of the worst Catwoman looks I've ever seen in my life. It's not a good look. I'm so glad they changed it in the movie. We'll talk about that more. Catwoman's had a lot of bad looks, and this is because this is still at a time where the writers didn't totally know how to write characters like Catwoman and Poison Ivy. They hadn't figured it out yet. They hadn't cracked the code. And I think Catwoman's well written in this, but her look is she looks like a mouse. She looks like a mouse. She looks ridiculous. It's weird, and I don't know what Tim Sale's fascination is with claws, but like everyone has a claw hand, and it's weird, and it doesn't look good. And then the number three thing I got to mention, and I think we're both going to be in agreement, total agreement on this last one. This is one of the worst designs of the Joker I've ever seen.
It's
so bad.
I think this is where like you get into like now you've got a Joker that looks almost like mutant or alien or
so weird.
Supernatural. It's kind of odd. And I know that
I will say this, it is hilarious. Like I laughed every time I saw it on page because it's so ridiculous, but I also do not like it. It's one of those nervous laughters like, oh no, that's so bad.
Yeah, like what's happening here?
What are we doing here? Like when you get such terrible bad news at like work or something, someone's like, hey, you just had like a 4-day project dropped on you, and you're like, no, I fucking didn't. You know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what the Joker now, but I will say to counter that, this is some of the best Joker writing I think I've seen, I've ever read. This is one of my favorite, as far as writing goes, this is some of my favorite Joker stuff is in this book in terms of just how chaotic but also funny the Joker can be in this book. There are sometimes the Joker's genuinely laugh out loud hysterical in this, but also terrifying and menacing, but also that jawline.
Yeah.
that 1.5 foot long jawline.
It gets into almost parody in a way. Like I'm just like, I get it. I get you want to make him look different, but it's a bit.
You know what
much.
it is? It gives me the vibe that Tim Sale's Joker gives me is Tim Burton doing the 60s animated Joker. If you look at that 60s animated Joker that was in like the Scooby-Doo cartoons and the old Casey Kasem cartoons, the Batman and Robin adventures from the 60s and 70s that had that weird triangle mouth with his cheeks all punched up like that. This is that if Tim Burton did it.
Yeah.
That's what this Joker reminds me of.
No, it's a weird look. And as far as the Catwoman thing, I feel like because you look
It's
at
not a good costume.
well,
The costume's just weird.
it's what David Musielli, who drew Batman Year One. It's like Tim Sale's kind of doing an extension of that. But you're right. I think redesign her costume.
but this is also because this is 85.
Yes. No. Year one is 85.
Year one's 85. Long Halloween is 96, right?
Yeah. So there's plenty of a gap, but you could have done something different.
Well, but not only that, here's what I think they were trying to do. Because to jump a little bit ahead, in the movie, they redesigned Catwoman's look to look like a more practical take on the 90s animated suit. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like the 90s animated suit where it's like a dark gray with the black stay. It's like a take on that suit is what they do in the movie. Only it's a little more not adult in the sense of like risque, but adult like this is what a grown up version of this suit would look like.
Yeah.
So I feel like they were trying to like Tim Sale was trying to distance himself from that look as much as possible because at this point the show is on the air and it's wildly popular.
Yes.
So he wants a different look from that, and I get that. Maybe take another pass at it next time.
It's yeah, it doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you, but at the same time, now that you say that,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, oh yeah, no, I get you.
Every time I saw a Catwoman on the page, I was like, I would just try to look at the speech bubbles like really closely. I don't want to look at this suit. The suit is not good.
Yeah,
Um, but let's talk some of the other character designs in this book, though, because there's other characters in this book. Let's talk about the design of Batman in this book. What do you think?
I think it's I think it's Batman from year one. Like I don't know. Like this is where I get into artistic style, or did you do this intentionally? I've said this before. I'm not a big fan of overly buff Batman.
Mhm.
And I think he skirts the edge of you made Batman a little too big.
He's still lean and lanky in this book, but he's also kind of swole. Like this is like because I know year one is supposed to be like year one of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, ultimately.
Yeah.
Or so it feels like Tim Sale was going for like whatever the next logical step in evolution would be towards that version of Batman. And it's a little sometimes when you see like an evolutionary process, not all the pieces parts are quite where they need to be yet. And this feels like a transitional look for Batman. Like whatever was going to come next was going to be improved upon.
Yeah.
Because this is not a bad look for Batman, but it's not my favorite.
Yeah. This is where, like, again, look, I love Jim Lee to death. I think his art is fantastic, but he
Yeah.
makes everybody, if they're not in their 20s, have the same build. And I think with
Yes.
Batman, like, when you look at a poster that Jim Lee's drawn of Batman and Superman, you really can't see a character. It's just a big dude, like chest out.
Yeah,
So I think,
I don't like my Batman to be like I don't mind a big beefy Batman. I prefer my Batman to be physically unimposing but menacing because of
yeah,
what he gives off because he's so good at the theatricality side of things.
yeah. So but I don't like that. Doesn't stick out to me horribly. It's just every so often I'm like, okay, he's a little swollen this, but whatever.
There's only one thing about this particular Batman design that I'm not super hard up on, and that's just how long the cape is.
I think that, yeah,
This is like, and we talked about this on our Batsuit episode, which is just like there's two things I look for that I tend to take notice of with a Batman design, and that's how long the ears are and how long the cape is. As much as I love Grant Morrison's JLA run, cape's too long, ears are too big. Um, Cape needed to be a little bit shorter. I think the ear length is just fine for me. I think it's like right because Batman Beyond is like as long as I like my Batman ears. Anything longer than that's ridiculous. Um, this cape is way too long. It's one of those where it's like he walks into a room and 10 minutes later the cape is still on its way in.
yeah. No, this is also this is that time, like all through the 90s.
Oh yeah. Oh
This
yeah.
Batman's cape is just all over the place.
They tried to make Batman the 90s were very big on like proto demon Batman.
Yeah,
Like they tried to really make Batman a creature of the night to make him look as different from as to make him as separate in appearance from Bruce Wayne as possible to varying degrees of success.
yeah.
Um, let's talk about the last big character design in this, and that's Two-Face. What do you think of Two-Face's look in this? Because he's not in the book a lot. I'm talking about Two-Face, by the way, not Harvey Dent. Two-Face.
I think Two Face is a character that belongs in a comic. I
Mhm.
think in live action, it's really hard to do because
It's tricky.
it's there are certain things, I called it cartoon physics or comic book physics. Like, as cool as it looks for Batman to swing from place to place, that looks dumb in a book in a movie. You know,
Yes.
um,
That's why the Batmobile exists.
yeah. But I think with
That's why editing
Harvey, yeah,
exists.
with Harvey and Dent, the more deranged, messed up you make the Harvey side, the more cool and interesting it makes him because of the dichotomy of who he is. But you just can't do it in live action. It just looks dumb.
It's hard. It's very difficult. We've only had a couple of examples of it. One of which was Tommy Lee Jones, which is I mean we've talked about that. It's not a well done design. Um, and then there's Aaron Eckhart in The Dark Knight, which we're going to talk about more next week. So we'll just kind of gloss over it. And it's just like, and for that one, all I'll say is just it was kind of the big reveal of the movie because nobody knew what he was going to look like until they saw the movie. And for what they were going for, it worked.
Yeah.
But Two-Face character design, yeah, you're right, is very hard to do live action. And I'm very curious how they're going to do it with Michael Shannon when he plays him in the Batman, because I'm totally saying that's going to happen because that's what I want to happen. But yeah, I think the design of him in the comics, especially in the Long Halloween, because sometimes the comics tend to make Two-Face look like overly gross.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They make him look like a corpse, or a zombie. This one, for the Long Halloween, they had to nail it. They were like, he's the main like, we've got to nail it. And Tim's design on Two-Face in this works very well. It's a very, very good. Honestly, other than the ones we've mentioned, all his other character designs are very good in this. Like, I love the look of Carmine Falcone.
Yes.
I love the look of Calendar Man. Poison Ivy looks very good in this. A lot of times, especially at this time, Poison Ivy just looked like softcore porn in a comic book.
Yeah.
And this one, I thought they actually handled how they work. This was one of my favorite examples of Poison Ivy being used well in a book, and the design being, yeah, it's Poison Ivy, but she's not a stripper.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, you get into the skank and Ivy, I think is what I like to call it. It's like,
well, yeah. It's this, especially in the 90s, comics didn't know how to juggle Catwoman, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn. They just didn't know what to do, especially Harley Quinn, because she was so brand new. They just didn't know how to write them, didn't know how to draw them. And so, and in the 90s, when everything was muscles and sex sells, yeah, it is what it is. But now we know, as now in 2023, we know, like, oh no, these are actually three just very interesting characters. Who Poison Ivy is a much more interesting character when she's not just there to poison fuck everybody.
Yeah, like, pretty much, yeah. But no,
so, but also, first time I read this, I was like, oh, didn't think I was going to see Poison Ivy in this book. Interesting.
Yeah, I think the only other, I'd say, complaint, but just observation, is that I would have loved to seen the Long Halloween come out now, because I think about, because this is a 90.
The book.
Yeah, as a book.
The book come out now.
Book, because the thing of it is, this is the 90s, so there's definitely like a bit of a splash page, 4 panels per page kind of thing that Tim Sale does a lot in this. And given that it's a noir detective thing, I would have loved to see like something what they did with Mr. Miracle, or Mitch Gerards and Tom King did, where every page is 9 panels, so that you can really get a mood, get a detective story. I think that's something, reading it this time, that I noticed, that I think I was like, huh.
So that's what we think of the art in this book. We've talked a little bit about what we like about the story, but let's really dive into it with the story of this book, written by Jeff Loeb. And like I've said a couple times, like this, when it comes to Batman storytelling, especially Batman detective slow burn storytelling, like, yeah, this is everything. This checks so many of my boxes for me. This is truly one of my favorite Batman stories. There's a reason it stood the test of time like it has, and it's just a really good mystery. It's a really, because even as a reader, even me knowing the ending was just kind of like, yeah, no, like, they really set it up where this could be like anybody.
Really. Is it a good mystery though?
Okay, let me rephrase that. The great mystery until the end. It's great. If there's one thing the movie did better than the book, it's the ending. The ending of the book is, to use a term I've heard a lot lately, that's one of my favorites, it's too complicated by half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, cool, you're good. You're less good. You're making it worse. You started off so good.
I think, I think my biggest issue, and I think it's a little different because it's a comic as opposed to a movie, is there are zero breadcrumbs for Batman to have figured it out.
Yeah. It's one of those, like, it's the mystery works better in hindsight, I think, at the time. But I also think that's one of the things the movie just does better. I think the movie just does a better job of laying out what, like, the actual investigation of the mystery. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It filled in some of that gray area in between that we don't get in the book. The book almost reads like you're reading a case file report. You know what I mean?
Well, because
Like,
let's I'm going to go this far because this is my
okay,
big gripe with this thing. So what you're telling me is
you have a gripe with something? Shut
you
up.
guys can't tell because it's a podcast, but I'm flipping Mike off right now.
Yeah.
But no, I think like here's where I'll go. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the comic, the first 3 murders are committed by Mrs. Dent.
I thought the first 3 murders were committed by what's his nuts.
No, the first 3 murders are committed by her.
Okay.
And then because it's happening, Harvey becomes her copycat at the same time or during that time. The boy, the Vito, what is his name? Vidi?
Yeah, Vito. No, 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 not Vito. The one Jack Quaid voices in
Yes.
the movie. Crap
We'll
on a
just call him
cracker.
Glasses McGee for now.
No, I'm gonna Alberto. God
Alberto.
bless America. There it is. Okay.
Alberto himself becomes a copycat after he fakes his own death.
Yeah.
My big
That's where it gets too complicated by half.
Well, that's where, in my opinion, like there's nothing that says or leads to that being a thing.
Oh no, you're like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
He's so dead. There's no way this could possibly be him.
Yeah.
There's no way he's still involved. He's dead.
I think the twist of it being him is the best part. And I would have loved for
Uh
that to be the thing.
See, I don't like him. I don't like him being a part of it.
But at the same
I don't like
time,
him being a part of it. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I
no,
interrupted you.
no, I mean, I think it'd be interesting for because to me now you're talking about a serial killer and 2 copycats who are completely and totally unrelated. And I think that's where you get to this point of like, so Harvey Dent doesn't know his wife's the original serial killer, and he's just picking and choosing, while Alberto's picking and choosing. And at no point do these 2 copycats ever go, who's the other person doing this?
That's the part where I think it gets too complicated by half is because they're not all in on it together. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And
If
I,
all 3 of them had been in on it together, and then the Two-Face thing was just a complete like, oh, the plan got fucked up and now we have Two-Face. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, oh God, this Two-Face thing happened and that's throwing our plan completely out of whack. Crap, we got to come clean. We got to end this now because now Harvey's Two-Face. I would have been way more into that. The fact that it's just random happenstance that they didn't cross over at all, I was like, okay, that's
Or,
that's too complicated by half.
or the wife's not part of it.
Or
Like that,
I
the wife thing to me is like now that
well
changes
here,
0. Hold on. It changes 0 in the story for the wife to not
yeah,
have been kill the first 3 people. Changes nothing at all.
sure.
And
I'm with
you
you.
you make Harvey Alberto's copycat, I'm there. Or vice versa.
This is one of those things I was talking about when we were texting the other day after I finished reading and watching the movie. Was this is one of those things I think the movie just did better.
Yeah.
It did differently and therefore better. Is that look, just make it 2 people. And but also I will say this, in the movie, Gilda is much more of a character. Gilda's barely in the book, and when she is, it's for like a panel.
Yeah. You don't get
Her
any of
her
the melodrama.
no, her being a part of the conspiracy at the end in the book doesn't land as well as it does in the movie, because in the end of the book you're like, well, what the hell has she been a part of all? When was she a part of all this?
Yes.
She was in the hospital for a while. Harvey said, go to bed, I'm gonna go fight the Joker, and then the Joker like what did she saw him carrying a gun at one point. Like, what part in all this did she play? In the movie, you really delve into their relationship, their backstory. The whole thing with her and Alberto, I think, is very good. It's because that's not in the book,
No,
because
it's
that's
not.
just in the movie.
It's just the movie.
And I really like that. I really like that. And so that's one of those things that the movie introduced that I'm like, this is now granted, I don't know how well that would have worked in the book for a movie, that's one of those things where I'm like, they did this way because it works better for a movie, and it worked really well. It would have been neat to see them try that in the book, but I don't know how well that story would. It's a medium transfer. Certain things don't always translate as well.
Correct.
So that's that gray area I'm in where it's like the ending of the book is it's just it's too they overplayed it.
It's too contrived.
It's too contrived. They overcomplicated it. They got greedy is what it is. They got greedy with the mystery. They got greedy with twists.
Yeah.
Like, we'll put in this twist. Oh, but what if we put in another twist? Everyone loves twists because it's the 90s. I think Shyamalan has put out Unbreakable at this point. No, that's not till 2001. But people love twists. I think they got too ahead of themselves with the twists. I think Jeff Loeb got a little too into high on his own supply. The movie was like, let's uncomplicate this a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my big thing. Is I just feel like, I know we're trying to play a Batman who's not exactly the detective, but that was my only that just to me is the biggest curveball out of nowhere, that she was the
Yeah.
original killer.
That's honestly the only part of the book I genuinely have like a hang up with. I could probably, because even now, just trying to think, I just reread it like the night before, like trying to go back and like think of anything else in the story that made me go like, it's like, no, there's nothing that really like, especially because like I've seen the movie more than I've read the book because it's just easier to digest.
Sure.
And I love Jensen Ackles, and also like we'll talk about her more, but also like R.I.P. Naya Rivera, who's the voice of Catwoman in the movie, and I think they do a great job voice acting. So I love watching the movie, but I'm hard up to think of anything in the book in particular from a story perspective that I'm really not on board with. There's actually some things in it, like it's I think at this point I kind of need to just go into like comparing the movie and the book, because anything else I can bring up is going to fall under comparison, and we haven't talked much about the movie yet, so
Well, hold on.
yeah.
I
I was gonna say, unless you've got something else you want to hit on here,
yeah,
let's start
I
moving into
think
the movie a bit.
I think the thing you mentioned before is not the problem of the writing, but it is problem of the story, is that because Tim Sale's art is the tone it is, you're
Yeah,
right. Sometimes you're like, who am I talking about? Who I don't
yeah,
you're verbalizing 5 or 6 different people, and I'm not sure who they are because everybody looks the same in the art.
yeah,
And I think you in a movie or a cartoon, depending on how you do it, it's different
yeah,
because you can attach to, like, this is Vidi, this is Alberto, this
yeah.
is the girl, this is the this, da, da, da.
You've got more time to like live with their face in a scene, and you get the opportunity to do more with their emotions because it's moving,
Yeah.
and you can put a voice to it.
So I think that is
Yeah.
what kind of hurts the story, because I think writing wise it's fantastic besides the end. Um,
Yeah.
but no, oh yeah, that's my thing. And as far as like going into the movie, like I think the flip side is
Because you're not the biggest fan of the movie.
no, no. I have seen the
I
movie.
and I will say it's not my favorite by any stretch of the imagination. But
Yeah.
there are certain things in the movie where I like it more than you, because of course I do. But because you hate everything and I like everything. Um, but I will say, like, it's not my favorite, but I do think like you tell somebody, hey, you guys got to go make an animated adaptation of the Long Halloween. Your first thought is, I'm sorry, what? you you want me to do what? I don't care how good of a director you are. I don't care how much of a Batman fan you are. If Bruce Timm came in here right now and said to you and me, we want you guys to write and direct a animated adaptation of some other Batman storyline, my first reaction is going to be absolutely not. I have no idea how to go about doing that. So being the person tasked with, and I should probably say what the person's name is, being Chris Palmer tasked with directing an animated adaptation of this beloved story. That's intimidating.
It's intimidating, and it's also like the thing of it is comics are a page, it's a still frame. Movies have movement and action. So you have to decide what you're going to add to it. Like, I think the one thing I did like about The Dark Knight Returns is all of the action is kicked up because you have movement and action, which helps. I think with this movie, I think part of what throws me is they kick up the melodrama with everybody. Harvey Dent and his
Okay.
wife are blah blah to the point where I'm like Josh Jamel, settle down. This is just a cartoon.
Okay. Well, but that's also why you pick the cast you do is like those are because those are the performances you're going to remember.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, is everybody kind of like going from 0 to 100 with the voice acting in this movie? Yeah, 1000%. Am I captivated by every line they're saying? Yeah, because they're voice acting like they act. Here's that's the thing I want is the that's what I appreciate about a good voice actors who voice act the same way they regular act. And that's just kind of how Josh Duhamel, I'm not know how you say his last name.
that's okay.
J- Josh Duhamel, that's how he acts. That's just how he is.
And it's
He's
not bad.
always he's and playing it to extremes like that, I think just fits who Harvey Dent is because Harvey Dent is
Yeah.
extremes.
See, and I think when it's the story of the Long Halloween, I like it.
Okay.
When it's the added, for some reason we have to give all three of these characters, Batman, Gordon, and Harvey Dent, more of their lives, of these relationships they have with their women,
Right.
I'm just checking out. I'm just
It's
checking
funny.
out.
It's funny you mention that because I think Gordon's actually kind of gets the short end in the movie.
He
We see
does.
him. We see more of them because at this time in the comics, uh, baby girl Barbara Gordon wasn't there. They just
Correct.
had the son.
Correct.
So in the movie, it was that laying the breadcrumbs of Barbara
Which is fine. Like,
because
I didn't mind
which is
that.
which is fine. Yeah, his wife is almost not in it, but even when she is, it's mostly just because I think what they were trying to do, what they were expounding on. There's little bits of this in the book, is they were expounding on because again, all three of these characters, Gordon, Batman, and Dent, all of them, especially Dent, are not the same person at the end as they are at the beginning. And I think what's interesting is that they're showing us how the life these men live is affecting them outside of work. We see the effect it's taking on Bruce Wayne's personal life and his relationship with Alfred, his relationship with Selena. We see the toll that it's taking on, or that it's rather not taking on Gordon's personal life because his wife, he's got a family, and his wife is there to say, "Hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
I will leave you out dinner." And she sees the moment because she sees the moments where he comes home and the first thing he does is he goes into his son's room and rocks with his son for a while. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But then you get to see how it's affecting Harvey's life. So I like getting to see because it's one of those questions we ask ourselves as fans sometimes is like, what does this do to your personal life? Let's find out.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. That's part, and that's why this is the movie's in two parts, and that's why when you're making a movie, it's like you got to flesh it out with something. Now they chose to flesh it out entirely with melodrama. You're absolutely right. This goes full soap opera a few times. Now, is it good? Yes. Is it a lot? Also, yes. Like like a good amount of melodrama is fine. This
If
is
you
too
want
much
that. If you
if
want
you
that.
want melodrama.
Yeah.
And I think if there's a story that lends itself to some melodrama, it's The Long Halloween. And if you need to pad out something for runtime, melodrama is going to be the thing. But man, you're right. Do they pad out the melodrama? Especially with Harvey and his wife. But I will say this because of how good the ending of the movie is, it's not as good without the Harvey and Gilda melodrama. You
Seeing
need that melodrama to make their altered ending hit as good as it does at the end.
see, and I don't depending on what part of the ending you're talking about.
I'm talking
I
about her involvement in everything.
Okay. Yeah.
The part that was non-existent in the
Yeah.
comics, where suddenly she's just in on it,
Yeah.
or suddenly she just is Holiday and everyone else is a copycat. She's the OG. It's like, since when? This is like,
Well,
no, we get to see early on, like, Harvey's nuts. She's got her own shit going on too, though.
correct. And I think I so here I'm gonna rant a little bit. So this is where you get into what the character is supposed to be. Batman in this storyline in the comic is learning he has to be a detective. He's not the smartest
Yeah.
man in the room yet. The bat
No, far from it.
the Batman in the movie
Yeah.
is the current incarnation of Batman.
You are correct. Yeah.
So
Which the dialogue does not line up with. I will say that because they copy some of the "I didn't know I had to be a detective" dialogue into the movie, and the movie is a lot more tonally. That Batman's a lot more detective
yeah,
focused than the book is. Not all the way, but it's still very much like this Batman's too good to be failing this hard.
yeah. And this is why the big one of the biggest issues I have besides a melodrama is there's no way in hell Batman lets her go. There's
Oh
no
yeah,
way in hell he lets her go.
yeah.
Hell no.
Not this Batman.
No,
The
and not
Batman
a
in the movie does not let Gilda go.
no. That's where I'm like, even the Batman in the comic may not have, unless there's like a guilt about it, which then you
Yeah,
need to express of like, hey, I failed Harvey. I'm gonna let you go, but I ever get an ink now that I'm this bad dialogue, but I ever get like an
yeah,
inkling that you're back or you're doing this,
yeah.
you're done. And I that's my only that's
And
like
that's
a big
and I think
thing.
that's kind of what they were going for. I think they were going for like, I'm gonna let you go, but do not ever let me see you again.
And I just don't buy that out of Batman. That is my
Out of Batman in general, or out of this version of
in
Batman?
general. Like Gordon, I could see doing that because he's a little bit more guilt ridden and a little
Oh,
more.
see, I'm on the flip. I think Batman's the first one to be like, are you ever gonna do this again? Am I ever gonna see you again? Get the hell out of Gotham.
Yeah,
I think Gordon's the one who would be like, no, we need to lock her up.
that's
I
possible. Yeah,
think I because here's the thing, and they're never it's never alluded to ever again. I don't think Batman has ever told Gordon about Gilda.
well, because that's in the comic. That's in the cartoon of the comic.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying is like I mean ever. Because Gilda's one of those characters who's just kind of never mentioned again
Correct.
in the books. In the book, Gilda, because granted, the Long Halloween, it's kind of a one off, kind of not. It depends on how technical you want to get here. Um, Gilda is a character that was created for the Long Halloween, and it never shows up again. So that's why I think only three people living know that Gilda was involved, and that's Gilda, Batman, and Harvey. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Because
maybe.
the way it's done in the movie, it was all Gilda, and Harvey just realizes at the end that it was Gilda and takes the fall,
Yeah,
which is kind of what they're alluding to in the book, but it's not super clear because again, we spend like no time with Gilda.
yeah,
Um, so what I appreciate about Gilda's use in the movie is just that it simplifies the ending.
yes,
It takes the ending and it just makes it doesn't, guys, it's just complicated enough.
yeah,
It's just complicated
yeah.
enough.
Harvey
And,
Dent unintentionally or intentionally copycatting his own wife as the serial killer is a
yeah,
lot better story than two copycats.
yeah. Because the way because they're presented, because even if you just remove Alberto from the comic book part of it and it's still just Gilda and Harvey, it's still executed better in the movie.
I think so.
But again, that's because we give a crap about Gilda in the
Yeah.
movie.
Besides
In
Batman letting her go, I still don't. I
I
don't.
see. I think Batman's the first. I guess I think Batman's the first one because he's done it before. He does it. He does it a lot where he's like, "This was something you did that was bad. I get why you did it. I don't condone what you did. You're never going to do it again. If I ever see you again, I'm putting you in jail."
Yeah. I don't like
It's the one
robberies,
bad
like
day scenario.
Catwoman
It's the one
do it.
bad day, but also
Yeah.
everyone she killed was bad. And I think, and because even Batman has to admit to himself a couple times in the book and the movie where he's
Yeah.
like, "Should I care?" Like the question comes up a lot. It's like we're putting, because again, we see those elements of their personal lives, and they mention where it's like, guys, we're putting in a lot of work to protect some pretty bad people. Like there's some irony in that when you think about it. We're going out of our way to protect one mob boss from another. It's what a life to live.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those, like, even in the movie, the good stories, the good important story beats are all there. Obviously, when you're doing it with a medium transfer, you've got to fill in some of the gray area. What do you fill it with? Drama, because especially because they're going for the R rating and they don't abuse it. They go for the R rating just so they can make a faithful adaptation, because there's just some stuff in the book that it's like, if you're there's no way to do it without an R rating. And
Yeah.
but like I said, this is one of those times where, and I know we keep saying we're going to have this conversation, and when we have the time we will, but this is what in the discussion of R-rated comic book properties that you and I keep tiptoeing around, where when it's stuff like Deadpool or Logan, it's not as much your thing. When it's stuff like this, where it's R-rated for themes and a single F-bomb, how do you feel?
I think when I think this is a good R rating as far as the
This
animated.
this is, as far as R-rated animation goes, this is the kind of thing that you're like, this is where we need to be.
Even though the language thing, whatever,
It's one F-bomb.
but it doesn't bother me. My thing is
Yeah.
like my thing with something like the R rating of Logan is that there's nothing it brought, because he was just as violent, just as everything, and adding curse words, in my opinion, doesn't make a movie better when it's a comic book thing. When it's Goodfellas and people of that lifestyle speak that way, makes total sense. I don't ever needed to see Professor X dropping an F bomb.
I get it.
But like,
I get that can be but again, this also says more about who I am as a person than anything
well,
else. And I think I don't care.
yeah, it's back and forth. Like, but with this particular one, like, I think you have to make it R because it is about a serial killer. Like, if you did a story that was about Mr. Zaz, you're probably gonna have to do an R or just show nothing of what he's done.
At which at that point, what's the point?
Yeah. So
You know
I
what I mean?
think I like, could
Well,
you say
you're right.
PG-13 horror? Sure, whatever.
Oh, sure. Because
But
honestly, the book, other than just the blood from the murders,
doesn't show anything.
and Two-Face being scary as all hell, it's not that adult. It's just a very dark story. And it's a story that deals with very adult themes. It deals with the mob, it deals with murder, it deals with infidelity, it deals with really adult stuff. It's like, there's no child that's going to read this story under the age of 15 that's going to understand half of what's going on.
Yeah.
Especially today.
Yeah.
But even back then, a child anyone under the age of 15 in the 90s was unless they were just a gifted child, was probably not going to get half of what was going on in this book. No kids were, especially. And so, yeah, when it comes to, even though it's an animated movie, you market it as it's an animated movie. It's an adult animated movie. It's an animated movie for grown-ups. As far as rated R, because there's some of the animated ones that go rated R where, even for me, I'm like, did we have to?
Yeah.
We have to really. I mean, like the Constantine one, I get that one's fine. Dark Knight Returns fine. This one is one of those, like, yeah, if you wanted to show this animated movie to your young children, I would say as long as they're over the age of maybe 10, they'll probably be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing too bad. But no,
There's a single F-bomb in the last 5 minutes of the second movie.
yeah.
That's it. That's the worst the language gets. Oh, and somebody calls somebody else a son of a bitch, but that's about it.
What do you think of the voice acting?
I think the voice acting is pretty good for the most part. I mean, obviously, we all know how much I love Jensen Ackles as Batman. I think Naya Rivera is a very good Selena Kyle in this, and it's again, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, rest in peace Naya Rivera, who the movies are dedicated to, who passed away in a boating accident, far too young, prior to the release of this movie. I think now I'm on the record, and I know you're not a gamer. I'm on the record as I love Troy Baker's Joker, because it's the same voice he uses for the video games and a couple of other animated features. And for somebody who was hired specifically to be young Mark Hamill's Joker, I think he does a very good job. I think his Joker, it's become more his own thing in the years since. Because the first time he did it, it was like, hey, you're playing a younger version of Mark Hamill's Joker. Do that.
Yeah.
In the time since then, he's gotten to do the Joker a lot more, and he's come to kind of create his own thing with it. And I really appreciate that. So I like his Joker in this. I'll tell you who I'm surprised how much really stuck with me, like how much I think about their performances are um Jack Quaid as Alberto Falcone and David Dastmalchian as Calendar Man.
Yes, I think they both.
I was really impressed with how much, because Jack Quaid, I mean, first of all, Jack Quaid's awesome, not
Yeah.
just in The Boys. Jack Quaid's just kind of greatest Superman too,
Yeah.
just kind of universally awesome. And I had forgotten that he was the voice of Alberto in this when I watched it the other day, and I was like,
Same.
oh yeah. And I watched it, I was like, man, he doesn't have a ton of time in this movie. He's so good.
Yeah.
He's so good.
No, I
And
think
David Dastmalchian as Candle as because David Dastmalchian always gives 110%. Him as Calendar Man is flawless.
no, I think all of them is good. I think like Jensen Ackles, I think my biggest issue with him is just because I know him. He's a supernatural guy. He's the coach from Smallville. So there's times where I'm just like, it's not Batman, it's Jensen Ackles. I
Well,
feel
and for me,
bad. I shouldn't be that way.
you feel bad. Well, yes, and here's where it's hard for me, because I was not a I never watched Supernatural. I was not a fan. I only watched like the first season. For me, he's Red Hood.
Fair.
A lot of folks forget he was Red Hood, and under the Red Hoods, he's Jason Todd to me. So I have a hard time digesting him as Batman because all I hear is Red Hood. So but I like his Batman voice more than I like his Bruce Wayne voice. Let me say that much.
Yes.
I buy him as Batman. I do not buy him as Bruce Wayne.
And I think at one point I'm watching the movie and Ryan walked in. I don't remember what he said, and she's like, "Uh oh, Jensen's having a hard time keeping that Texan out of his voice."
My roommate came downstairs when I was watching this, and she was like, "Oh, I thought you were watching Supernatural for a second," because all she could hear is Jensen Ackles, and I'm like, "Yeah, no, I get it. He's got a very distinct voice and a very distinct career. It's hard to, you know." It's like,
Yeah.
it's Seth MacFarlane walks in the room and he goes, hey, and then he leaves. Like, that's what he does. He does his Peter laugh and he leaves.
Yeah.
So he's fine.
Yeah.
The one we need to talk about, I think, though, is Josh Duhamel as Two-Face.
Yeah.
He's fine.
I
He's fine, except when he's not. He's fine except for when he's not. Because there's a couple. Here's what I will say. I love his Two-Face voice.
Yes.
I think his Two-Face voice, I had to Google it to make sure it wasn't the guy from the 90s.
Richard Bull.
Thank you. I was so sure they brought him back to record this voice for this movie, because I was like, it's too good. There's no way that's still Josh Duhamel. There is no way. I do not believe you. It's like when you tell me that Colin Farrell was in the Batman. Sure, everybody says that, but I haven't seen him.
Yeah.
So that's what I will say, is that when he is Two-Face, I'm in 100%. When he's Harvey Dent, I'm in more than I'm not, but I'm not in all the time.
He goes, when it gets to the melodrama, I'm just like, why is it Gordon go over there and go like Harvey, shut up. We're in public.
I know.
Why are you yelling?
Like, the stuff with him and Gilda, I like. The stuff with him and Batman and Gordon, is hit or miss with me. I don't know what it is. When he's having the softer moments with Gilda, it's but again, I think that also lends up to how well those moments are written. It's very good. When he's like when he's with Batman in the warehouse and he's being a smart ass about should we take the money or not, I was like, I don't buy this. I don't know. Something is not jiving with his performance, or like when they're having the argument on top of police headquarters, whatever it is. I don't know. I feel like Josh had a harder time dialing into this movie than I think even he thought. I think he went into recording this confident, and at some point in the process that confidence got shook. I don't know what it was. Maybe they recorded his regular stuff after they recorded his Two-Face stuff. Maybe they did his Two-Face stuff last and he was frustrated, and that's what made such a good performance. I don't know, but something happened in the process of recording his Harvey Dent stuff where it just wasn't hitting as often as you would have liked. You know what I mean?
Well, and because some of these things, like I think we have the misconception that The movie's done. You come do the voice acting in an afternoon. That's not always the
Right.
case. If they change things, they re-edit things. Sometimes these people have to come back and do it. It is
Oh yeah.
sometimes that they just do it in a day,
Yeah.
depending on the project. So it feels like maybe he had a hard time if he had to come back dialing back into what he was supposed to be doing.
That's why I'm wondering if maybe they just did his in a day. Like maybe he had a scheduling thing and they just had a day to do his. I don't know.
Like I
I don't
like
know.
that dude. I love him
I
in the
like Josh
Transformers
Duhamel a
movies.
lot.
Like
He's one of the
just
good. He should have been the one we followed in those movies, not Shia LaBeouf.
they should have just said he was Duke and give him his own GI Joe film. That's
That's
all I'm
fine.
saying.
I'm cool with it. Uh, yeah, it just something happened, and I love Josh Duhamel. It's just something when he was doing Harvey Dent, because again, his Two-Face is flawless.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's his Two-Face is scary. But yeah, man, that's the one that where it's kind of this. It's similar with Jensen Ackles. It's like when he's Batman, it's great. When he's Bruce Wayne, flip a coin.
Yeah.
Not the flip a coin joke not intended, but that worked out perfectly. Yeah, a few of the others we can mention. I mean, Billy Burke as Commissioner Gordon's fine. He's not in the movie a whole heck of a lot.
It's okay.
It's fine. It's Jim Gordon.
Yeah,
he just needs to sound gruff. Um, you know, the little bit of time we get with John DiMaggio as Mad Hatter. I will say the Mad Hatter. We didn't say this. I didn't mention this when we talked about the book. I'm so glad the Mad Hatter Scarecrow stuff from the book is in this movie. Because first of all, that is a Batman villain pairing I didn't know I needed, and now I need a live action movie of that like yesterday. And the way that Mad Hatter and Scarecrow are written in both the book and the movie, because the movie pretty much one for one adapts it, are both just that's like that good fun Batman shenanigans that are happening. And I will say John DiMaggio as the Mad Hatter, good stuff. Like that a lot. I love in the book when they take turns yelling poetry back at each other in their hideout.
Yeah.
For no reason other than the fact that they're just weird. And then I love
very Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Exactly what I was about to say. It reminded me of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and I loved it. And I love it in the movie as well. And a lot of that's because John DiMaggio is just always a good Bender as the Mad Hatter. Yes, please.
Aquaman,
again,
outrageous.
But you also, I mean, you get a surprise appearance by Katie Sackhoff as Poison Ivy, which, don't get me wrong, like most nerds, I have a crush on Katie Sackhoff. Didn't know I needed her as Poison Ivy in my life. Now I kind of need that to happen. Yeah, it's not the voice cast is pretty good. It's not like mind blowing, except for when it is Josh Duhamel's Two-Face, but it's good. Pretty good.
I think the biggest here goes my big negative wrap up in a way is I think a noir detective story is very hard to pull off in animation.
Yes.
Especially when your voice cast may not be right for that genre.
Yeah. Like, I think they were good picks for the characters. Maybe not the story.
Yes. And I think that's where this ultimately the wrap up of like, I have still yet to stay awake for both parts front to back. I had to watch it in pieces because I kept falling asleep.
Oh, Long Halloween.
Yeah. The movie.
Yeah.
It's just not, it doesn't grab me. And it sucks because like Jensen Ackles apparently is the Batman for a while in all of the animation stuff.
He is now. He is current. It's not so much for a while. He's only been in a couple, but he is currently the one they're using for their Tomorrowverse series of animated movies,
which is perfect. I think he's great in it. I just think this particular.
I have not yet seen Legion of Superheroes. I need to watch that one because that's the other one that he's in. I need to watch that first.
It's really good.
It's really good. I know you said it's good. I haven't watched it yet. I'm gonna watch it.
But no, I think that's the thing. Is it's I just think this cast wasn't right. Like if you use this cast to do Hush, thumbs up.
I want to say yes, but that Hush movie was so bad.
Anything would have been better. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're 1,000% right. Like because they put that. We're not going to talk about the Hush movie right now. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a good cast, the cast is in the. It's the same thing that happened with the Suicide Squad movie. It's a great cast. The cast is in a bad movie.
Yeah.
This is the difference where this cast is in a good movie, but they're in the wrong movie.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with that. One thing I will say in terms of relating the movie to the comic book, I don't know which version of Falcone I prefer because both versions are presented differently. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And by that I mean the way he handles his family. Because in the book, Falcone is far more affectionate towards Alberto.
Yeah.
Than he is in the movie. He treats him like garbage. And that's kind of that idea of like that's laying the seeds for you to think that especially if you're watching the movie for the first time as someone who's read the book and you think you know what's coming, having Falcone, having Carmine and Alberto have a tense relationship is a great red herring setup for you thinking Alberto is going to be the killer at the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In the book, Carmine loves his son.
Oh yeah, he's trying to keep him out of the business so he can go do something else.
But he loves his son. He's not cruel. He's not cruel to him. He's kind of a mother hen with him. Yeah. And that makes Alberto resentful, which again kind of plays into this is why the Alberto part doesn't work. In the movie, he's very cold to Alberto. But I will say, even on the flip of that, his daughter is far more the light of his life in the movie than she is in the book. Yes. In the book, it's like she is really having to work for his attention and his affection. Whereas in the movie, it's clear she was the favorite.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was another change or something. I'm not sure if that was a meant to be another mislead or something. Maybe I'm not sure. I'm not, but I'm also not sure which one I prefer. To be honest with you, I like both takes, but a lot of that in the movie lends itself to the performances, and because I prefer the ending. But I like the way it's written in the book. I like the way Falcone is written in both of these. Honestly, Carmine Falcone is a very underrated Batman character. I don't think he gets used enough in stuff.
I think he's dead in the book.
Well, he's dead in the Batman, and we know his son's alive, or at least in the DCEU, his son was alive because that's who Batman was taking down with the Flash at the beginning of the movie. But who's going to know what's going on going forward? But I always like having. I know Batman's there to fight supervillains, and I know this book is about him transitioning into supervillains. I still like it when he fights the mob, though.
Yeah,
but I love a good mob story.
Yeah. Well, that's what we think. What do you guys? Or do you have more?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what else to say, honestly, because this is one of those I could talk about forever because there's so much to pick apart and break through. Look, if you haven't read The Long Halloween, if you're looking for one. Here's what I'll put to you, and I think I know what your answer is going to be. If someone wants to get into The Long Halloween, they say, "What should I do first? Watch the movie or read the book?"
Read the book.
What would you have them do?
Read the book. Don't watch the movie. Read the book.
Oh, so you would just tell them don't watch the movie?
No, I would.
I would tell them watch the movie first, then read the book.
No, I read the book
because the reason is because I want to know what they think of the ending. I want them to watch the movie not knowing the ending. And then I want them to read the book and get the book's ending. And I want to see which one they prefer.
See, if the movie itself was a 2-hour movie and not 3 hours of time, I'd probably suggest watching the movie.
That's fair. It is 2 hour-and-a-half animated movies. So that's fair.
It's too much
it's a lot.
I hate to be this way. It's too much of a schlock.
It is a lot.
I won't watch it again.
I don't go back to it often. And I usually only go back for part 2 because part 2 has most of the action in it, and I'm that asshole. Yeah. Look, I like the movie more than I think most people did. I liked it a lot. I do think the book, however, while the ending is not everything it could be, I think the book itself is a real piece of comic book art. I think other than a few character designs, I think Tim Sale does some really, really good work with the designs in this book. every page looks like every page could be framed. Every page of this book could be put into a frame. You've probably seen some frames, some pages from this book shared on social media as art, and or seen versions of it and things. I guarantee you, if you love The Dark Knight, which we'll be breaking down next week, a lot of a lot of Harvey's story from The Dark Knight is in The Long Halloween, almost verbatim, even down to the shots of Gordon and Harvey and Batman on top of the police station by the bat signal. That is straight from this book. And the story about Carmine Falcone and his connection to the Wayne family, that is straight out of this book. So if you liked that stuff from the Batman, that's where this the scene where he's on Thomas Wayne's table having bullets removed is in this book.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a truly influential piece of Batman, I cannot recommend the book enough. The movie is what it is. That's what we think of this. We'd love to know what you guys think. Please let us know by hitting us up on Twitter at We Are the Batman. You can also follow the show on Good Pods. Good Pods is a cool podcast app where you guys can rate and comment individual episodes of our show. We're both on there. It's like social media. It's like a social media podcaster's app. If you're big into podcasting, we've been doing very well over there on Good Pods. We've been like the number 2 weekly indie hobbies podcast for like weeks. So thank you guys so much for that. If you're not over there on Good Pods yet, please consider joining us. If you guys would like to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Mr. Mike Shea.
You can find me at Mr. J Ninja.
That is going to do it this week on We Are the Batman. We'll see you guys again next week for a breakdown of 2008's Dark Knight. Same bat time, same bat podcast channel.
Bye-bye.